Now we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and CyberLabs. And our first question is, have you ever delivered CyberLabs? We already know that they have, but we'd love to hear more from David and Peter from Loyola.
Right. So an important part and a fun part of a cybersecurity class is the hands-on work. So I taught this class last year at Loyola, and I created an environment with two virtual Linux machines. One of them is called Kali, K-A-L-I. It's a distribution of Linux that has over 100 different security and forensics tools on it. And the other image I used was a Linux version called Metasploitable, which is an intentionally vulnerable Linux distribution. And I put them on the same virtual network. Last year, we did this in a computer science lab. So the students had to go to a computer science lab to work on this. It also meant that they hoped to get back on the same machine in the lab that they were using the previous time if they wanted to see everything laid out exactly the same. They should be able to still do the homework on different machines, but it's not the exact same familiar environment. So this year, I only teach just one class a year. So we, like most people, we sent students home around March for the pandemic, and I wasn't teaching till the fall. So we had time to get this organized. So our options were, we could try to find a remote access solution for students to get into the computer science lab, or we can install software on the students' desktops, and both of those are very problematic. But in my primary role of working for Pete, I knew he was working with Apporto, so that was the connection we were able to make. And so Apporto set up a virtual Windows machine for every student, and inside of the Windows machine is the Hyper-V virtualization software. And the two Linux images run in that Hyper-V image. So every student could access this remotely from their home, which worked out very nicely for all of our students. It also, last year there were a couple desktops that we installed this on in the lab that had one or two pieces of software that were slightly different, and there were a couple configuration options, but this was imaged by Apporto, so every image was exactly the same. It also allowed me, I could hop on if a student was having a problem. They could log off of Apporto, and I could log on, and I could connect to their virtual machine and see exactly what they were doing. A lot of times they would just email me a problem, and I could tell them what to do, but sometimes I wasn't sure what the solution was, and I needed to log on and look at things myself. So I could do that. Also, when we were in a lab, if the student sent me a question, if I didn't answer immediately, they would leave the lab, and then when they finally got the answer from me, they'd have to go back on a different day perhaps. But now, since they're just working from home, they'd send me an email, and they could go work on something else and just leave the Apporto open in one tab of their web browser. And when they got the email answer from me, they could just then go back and pick up working. There were a couple exercises that we did that worked out very nicely. One thing was we were learning about what is a firewall. And so having two machines networked together, two virtual Linux machines networked together, they could do a port scan from one of the machines against the other machine, and then they could use the IP tables firewall and update the firewall. So that was nice that could all be in a safe virtualized environment that they were working on that. The last couple of homeworks that we worked on, one of them was a password guessing exercise against a list of usernames and hash passwords that I had created. And so I gave them that file, and they had to recover the original passwords. The other one was a forensics exercise where there was an image of a USB hard drive that had the files deleted, and they had to recover the deleted files. So both of those were files that I had to give them, and they had to transfer into Kali, where there were tools to work on those. So Apporto had set up this OneDrive mapper software where it's right on the Windows desktop. They opened that, and there's a link to our Office 365 OneDrive. The students would log in, and there was a map drive there that students could copy those files from their OneDrive onto the Windows desktop. And then there was another mapped drive in the Windows desktop that duplicated everything over into the Kali Linux virtualized environment. So it was very easy for students for me to give them files that they could then transfer into the Linux environment where they could do their homeworks. I guess thinking about other positives is that I was able to very efficiently answer students' emails. You don't need a lab support team. I'm not sure that's a positive because I was the lab support team, I guess, but it did lead to very efficient answers for students.
So essentially, you had to spend less time doing technical support and hopefully more time teaching. Is that a fair summary? Albeit it's biased, obviously, but is that a fair summary?
So there was tech support that had to be done, but it wasn't with Apporto. It was more with the Linux that the students weren't entirely familiar with that environment. So it enabled me to get more done, to teach more things, give them more experiences that would have had to been a lot slower, less rich experiences if they were doing it some other way.
Okay. Great. Peter, are you gonna add any colorful, wonderful comments?
To be honest, I wasn't. I'm not a faculty member, so I just kind of helped facilitate and get Dave connected with the team at Apporto to get what he needed. But again, really happy with Max and his team. It's nice that it's a fully baked solution, but like Mark was saying earlier, it's very customizable. So Dave knew what he needed, as a faculty member and what tools he needed to be able to deliver. And, Max and his team were able to, build that and deliver it very quickly and very easily.